a very, very long time indeed. What might that look like, and how should we assess the deal that seems to be on the verge of being agreed? Let's talk to Richard Pater about that, Director of BICOM, the Britain-Israel Communications and Research Centre, an independent body that produces research about Israel and the Middle East and is based in Jerusalem. Richard, good to have you with us tonight. Thank you for coming on. We have been here before. We have been in a situation where a ceasefire seemed to be imminent, hopes were raised, and it proved to be unfounded. As we speak tonight, how confident are you, this time at least, that a ceasefire is finally going to happen?
Well, I think you raise an important point that really since last May, the contours of this deal have been known, and as you said, it's been on again, off again. And so people are very careful until it's signed and people see hostages coming out. People will be sceptical. Having said that, it does feel different this time round. I think there are 3 or 4 factors that are different this time. First of all, one can't ignore the Trump factor in the room and the fact that all parties in the region are keen to win favour with the new president, because they all have their own agenda and ambitions for the rest of his presidency. And so the president has made it quite clear, Trump, that he wants to get this off the agenda before he comes in. And so that is influencing the time frame. But I also think over the last 3 or 4 months, what we've seen Israel's perhaps the greatest threat from the north collapse with a very impressive military operation. You saw the beepers and the pagers, as well as the targeting of the leadership. And so now that Hamas basically has been left isolated among the Iranian proxies, it's really only the Houthis left that are still firing rockets at Israel. But Israel feels much more secure and confident. The rehabilitation of the IDF in that period has also strengthened its hand in a regional picture.
And talk to us, if you would, Richard, about your understanding of the outlines of this deal. I appreciate there's a lot of uncertainty. I appreciate lots unknown. But what's your understanding of what this deal will entail if indeed it goes ahead?
So our understanding at the moment is that this is going to be at least in the first stage, a 6-week deal, which will include an immediate ceasefire from the IDF and then a gradual pullout of IDF forces. And then starting from the first day on a weekly basis, we'll see a gradual drip release of the hostages, and an exchange, depending on which hostages are released, an exchange of Palestinian terrorists and prisoners who are not mostly, but some of them are convicted murderers who are serving life sentences in Israeli prisons. And that will be on a ratio that we don't yet understand, but it's roughly to be for one hostage for 40 or 50. But that's
40 or 50 Israeli prisoners for every single Israeli hostage?
Yeah, Palestinian prisoners for every hostage.
Yes, sorry, as in prisoners being held in Israel. Yes.
Yes, and I think the crimes that they're serving range. There are some which are more junior. Then it goes up to what Israel refers to as the heavyweight prisoners with blood on their hands. Those people that have been directly responsible for murders. And that's where the opposition on the Israeli side is thinking, if one casts one mind back to 2011, Yahya Sinwar, the Hamas leader, was actually released in a deal that over 1,000 prisoners were released in exchange for one captured Israeli soldier. And so there's a lot of concern that all the work that Israel has done fighting terrorism over the last year could, in the long term, be undone by releasing more unrepentant murderers. So
are you concerned this isn't indeed a very good deal at all?
No, I still think that the top order of business, the top responsibility of any Israeli government, of any government, is to to protect their people. That was the failure of October the 7th, and so the first order of business must be to return the hostages. Just to give you a sense of proportions, the UK has a population 6 times the size of Israel. It's the equivalent of 580 Brits being held for 460 days. They were captured from their bedrooms, from their, in their pajamas. They were taken. And I remind you, this is an area that is in the broad international consensus of Israel proper, that just happens to be on the Gaza border. So the first duty of care of any government is to protect their civilians, which they failed at on the 7th, and now to bring them home. So even though it's going to come at a very high price, and there is concern about what that means for the future, I think on balance, most Israelis understand that it is the social contract of the government's responsibility to bring these people home.
It does beg the question, Richard, what has been achieved by the operation in Gaza? If the IDF does withdraw, it leaves Hamas in power in the Gaza Strip, which of course is something that Benjamin Netanyahu and his allies insisted was just unthinkable throughout this operation and this war. Well, it will leave people asking, what was the point? We were told it was to completely destroy Hamas and stop them ever attacking Israel again. And if what you're saying is correct in terms of the outlines of the deal, Hamas will stay in power and tens of thousands of people, including many of them innocent people, are dead.
That's right. I mean, I think I'd say 2 points. First of all, the one element of the deal that Netanyahu is apparently sticking to is that he reserves the right to return to fighting after a deal is done.
Right.
Although I think that seems to be unlikely, especially if it moves beyond that first 6-week stage, which is the 33 hostages to come out in that first stage, and then open up to us to kind of within that period there is a mechanism to extend it further to foresee the release of all the hostages. I think what the IDF has achieved is to break the command and control structure of the military infrastructure that Hamas had a year and a half ago, and that's not insignificant, and to diminish their capabilities to be able to carry out future attacks. And the other main concern is that's kind of where Israel turned a blind eye, if you like, for decades, a decade and a half since Hamas took over the Gaza Strip. About just under 20 years ago, that the smuggling and the weapons that were able to come in primarily from Iran through the Sinai Peninsula into Gaza, that whole chain has to be cut off. So Hamas are no longer able to
of course, rearm. In terms of the Israeli objectives, the progress has been made. Hamas has been diminished, but it hasn't been destroyed. And what Bibi Netanyahu said repeatedly was this war will not end until Hamas is destroyed. By his own criteria, he's failed.
I mean, he faces the Israeli public saying a similar thing, that from the beginning of the war, the dual objectives to destroy Hamas, to remove them from political power, and to return the hostages. Yes. Many analysts thought from the beginning that they were contradictory goals.
Well, he's achieved none of those three, has he? Many of the hostages are reported to have been killed. Almost none have been rescued by force. Hamas is still in power. It still has military capacity, and it still holds sort of political dominance. So it's been an objective utter failure, hasn't it?
I think elements of that is true. I'm not here to defend the government. I don't represent the government.
Sure.
Independently, I think yes, there are certainly that some of that criticism is quite reasonable and valid. I would only add to that, as I said, that they've definitely been able to diminish their capacity, and but the lack of Netanyahu has until this point refused to talk about the day after, and that until you accept that there needs to be a political solution at the end of the day, then yes, we're going to be stuck with Hamas in control, and that's not in anyone's interest. Certainly not the poor Gazans that have also suffered under Hamas rule.
It will have the world once again asking for the thousands of, and I know the figure's disputed, but tens of thousands are dead, an awfully high number of those are innocent people. What was it all for? What's been achieved for all that suffering? It seems to me not much.
No, I mean, listen. Again, I find myself. I'm not disagreeing with you. It's been a terrible war, costly on all sides. First and foremost in human life, but on so many other parameters and tests as well. I would only point the finger back. This all started because of a Hamas operation that thought that the flood of Al-Aqsa would change the constellations in the region. And what's happened, in fact, is that Hamas if they haven't been completely militarily defeated, have been substantially weakened. And now we hope that a new Palestinian leadership can rise up in their place. And that's kind of the hope that we cling to, although I agree with you that there is lack of political direction to take us there just yet.
Interesting. Richard, thank you for coming on. Richard Pater, Director of BICOM, an independent body that produces research and analysis about Israel and the Middle East. In a moment, we'll come back to our conversation about the government here. Why is it